Well, here we are once again, on the final leg of our journey. Soon we will reach our destination, just like we are the heroes, in our very own special road movie. You know, like Easy Rider, the Blues Brothers, or being more realistic, The Hitcher. Sadly, it's mostly good news again in this video, but thankfully for all of us, even some of the potentially glorious games managed to clutch defeat out of the jaws of victory in such impressive style they have to be honoured. Or more precisely, dishonoured for their reckless, self-destructive fucking hubris. Let's just be appreciative that there is a seemingly endless supply of people in the video game industry that can take a winning formula, a winning game, and still somehow manage to screw the fucking pooch with such extreme prejudice that they show up making news headlines in all their balls deep, red-faced, narcissistic glory. And let's be grateful for that. If there wasn't an endless supply of fucking cretins, I'd be out of a job. And I'd probably end up having to make Division 2 build guides or those horrible, insincere shill videos where people boldly exclaim that this next patch, this one next patch, is legit going to be the one that saves the Division franchise. That must be depressing, yet lucrative work considering I've seen a bunch of these shit-sucking videos every fucking patch for the last 3.5 fucking years. Even though the franchise is nevertheless still as irrefutably broken and fucked as a Cold War era tractor. But before we discuss the best video games of 2019, let's first give some love to those very special games that managed to be purely and perfectly mediocre. Anyone can try and get to the top, but settling perfectly on the top of that bell curve is a subtle balancing act that few games can pull off reliably. So let's tie on that disposable plastic apron, fire up that chainsaw, and finish bagging up this corpse once and for all. Most mediocre video game of 2019. Call of Duty Modern Warfare. The perfect balance between all things good and bad, and between every pro and con, a controversial, edgy plot that pulls every punch to play it safe, removing all the loot boxes and season pass, only to replace it with psychotic monetization, where they have female jihadi terrorists who are super nice and turn down suicide missions, because it would be a stereotypical characterization. Besides, some cuck volunteered. The player controversially sides with terrorists, who were actually incredibly jolly fellas and nothing really was their fault after all. A game where you have to choose between sparing the hostage or shooting them. But when you actually YOLO and pop them in the fucking eye socket, you instantly fail the mission. Modern Warfare is best described as a video game full of tough moral choices where picking the wrong one fails the mission and makes you realise there wasn't really a choice at all. I liked the campaign because of its visceral combat, gun fetishism and earthy plot, but like eating candy floss afterwards you realise that perhaps it was all pink food dye and sugar, and looking back I think I gave this game a little bit too much credit when I reviewed it. But hell, I ain't gonna bitch too hard either about the game or my initial impressions, because let's face it, the campaign was kinda fun. Because killing is fun. Especially in video games. Total War. Whatever the fuck it is this year and nobody cares anyway. I didn't even play it, but I'm nominating it anyway because these days they're all the fucking same. Fuck, the last one I played had virtually identical units in every faction, just wearing slightly different outfits. I mean, what's the point? These days, all new Total War games have been reduced to being this. They are a slightly modified version of a previous Total War game, slightly shrunk down and simplified, or it's a reboot of a previous Total War game, slightly shrunk down and simplified. As standard, half the fucking factions are locked behind DLC content, In 5 years' time, I'll probably be telling you about Rome Total War 6, and it will be so dumbed down the map will look like a checkerboard, and all the factions will be paid DLC. This used to be one of my favourite franchises, and now it's too boring to even cause a controversy. The only thing I can say in its defence is that the modding community used to be brilliant. In fact, someone should crowdfund the modders to take over the whole franchise. Rage 2. This is a game where you drive around like Mad Max, shoot everything like Doom, in a semi-open world environment like Fallout 4, and get very slightly bored and unfulfilled like Elder Scrolls Online. No prizes for guessing that this game was published and made under the umbrella of Bethesda, id Software and Avalanche Studios then, the folks who are collectively behind all those titles. Rage 2 is fine, the monetisation is fine, the support is fine, the price point was average, everything with this game works and is okay. If you ask anyone who played this game to give you its best and worst points, they'd probably stare into space, not be able to think of anything good or bad to say, and the only words likely to drop out of their gaping maw would be, it's pink. For me, Rage 2 is like the Call of Duty of open world FPS games when it comes to player experience. This is a game that is best enjoyed in small 30 to 60 minute chunks when you need a quick video game violence fix. Then you put it down and go back to eating spiders, cataloguing your vintage porno collection or whatever productive task you were doing. Rage 2 has one redeeming feature, and that is that I would recommend it to anyone who wants a casual, derivative, shooting / driving / dumpster diving, looting experience in small doses. It won't immerse you like Fallout or Mad Max, but it's pleasant enough if you need a small or medium-sized dose of killing and blowing shit up, injected into your otherwise desolate, meaningless, anomic time on this barren rock as it floats through the lonely vacuum of space. This game is well supported, works, they are releasing new content and delivering on their promises, and the microtransactions, whilst being inherently offensive, are entirely skippable. Unless of course you enjoy weapon skins in a game where you won't really ever notice them. Ultimately, I think Rage 2 is sadly just a little bit too good to qualify as most mediocre game of the year, despite its very concerted effort to cap the title. Gears 5. I mean, it was neither unpleasant or excessively pleasant. It was like a routine morning shower at an appropriate temperature, using standard non-fancy soap. Maybe it was more like having a shower on a campsite. Pleasant enough, but the tiles were cold, and you had the sneaking feeling someone had a piss in here just before you arrived. Gears 5 is a sequel, and that is probably the best compliment I can give it. But the winner of Most Mediocre Video Game of 2019 goes to Star Wars Jedi Fallen Boredom. This game is a masterclass in being average and mediocre. It is a product defined by what it's trying to not fuck up, not what it's trying to achieve. It's like a very experienced career butler. He stands to attention against the wall, stock still, because the #1 priority is to conform to the correct etiquette and not offend or annoy the diplomats, guests and royalty. Actually doing something useful that's worth a fuck is entirely a secondary concern. That is Star Wars Jedi Yawn Yawn Fucking Yawn. Watch my review where I spend an exhaustively long amount of time running in circles trying to find something to climb up whilst explaining how inoffensive this game is. Published by EA, a company renowned for its abusive monetization. Developed by Respawn, a company renowned for its rabid developers who go onto Reddit and call their players dicks, freeloaders and arse-hats. Oh yeah, and making the odd good game like Titanfall and Apex Legends. But the Meltdown story was funnier. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is a game defined by what it was not allowed to be. After the horror shows of Star Wars Battlefront 2, the gaming world was waiting for EA to fuck this up, and they waited, popcorn at the ready, to enjoy the shitstorm. Like a community of angry villagers waiting for the local recidivist sex offender to get out of jail, assuming he would immediately head to the nearest park and start exposing himself to the MILFs. Obviously. Just like a recidivist sex offender, EA has not changed its ways and will no doubt continue to offend in the future. But in this instance, had the common fucking sense not to do it whilst they were being followed around by an angry mob of villagers. They obviously gave Respawn a list of directives which they had to comply by. No microtransactions, no monetization, no sinister always online bullshit co-op nonsense with paid mechanics, no pay to win. Basically, don't do any of the stuff that caused a global shitstorm like Star Wars Battlefront 2. You know, don't do that stuff that EA normally always does. Well, what you got was Star Wars Schoolboy Boring Order, a game that is so inoffensive that you could give it to fucking nuns to play for the afternoon and they would probably come back and complain that there wasn't enough violence and fucking in it. Imagine if someone forced you to organise a stranger's funeral, but instead of telling you what they wanted or telling you about the deceased or the family, they only told you what you were absolutely not allowed to do. You just got given a fucking corpse and a long list of stuff that was banned from the funeral on pain of death, but no instructions about what they actually wanted. Banning Gary Glitter doesn't mean playing the dead Kennedys at the service is a good idea. Not dressing the corpse in a clown costume doesn't mean that stockings and a peephole bra is fine. Making sure there is no pork at the wake doesn't mean nachos and tequila body shots is okay. Simply avoiding the wrong stuff is not equivalent to doing the right stuff. Although I like the idea of people doing body shots over my open casket whilst I'm dressed in stockings and a titty bra whilst Too Drunk to Fuck is banging out of the church PA system. Nobody's going to forget that party in a hurry. But my point is, Fallen Order is as dull as a rainy day in Milton Keynes because it's reverse engineered to be inoffensive. It's like the artwork in a corporate head office or a selection of magazines in a waiting room. There is no danger that you will ever visit head office and see this, or reach down to pick up a magazine whilst you're waiting to have your fangs filed down and miraculously find a copy of this. Fallen Order is a game where you play the part of a young boy who has bunked off for the day from Hogwarts Academy. You run around a slightly badly planned semi-open world environment, gently tapping giant stuffed Muppet creatures and stormtroopers with your toy lightsaber, which unfortunately has a baked-in no-gore setting permanently activated. You will share your time between the following chores: chest-bumping walls and ledges only to find out you can't climb up them, getting lost, getting bored, and daydreaming about Carrie Fisher in a metal bra. And maybe that's the point. This game will only really scratch the itch of people looking for a Star Wars fix, and if that is genuinely your goal, save that 40 quid and go and spend it on a poster of Carrie Fisher and her metal tits. It's a better long-term investment and will at least give you long-term, albeit fleeting pleasure when you glance up at her seductive form. Star Wars Fallen Order is less inspiring than chewing your own toenail, and considerably less entertaining. Respawn Entertainment wins a second-hand copy of a random Ruth Rendell mystery novel in large print. Oh, and the last 10 pages are missing, just to make sure it's dull enough for their tastes. Best Video Game of 2019. Thank fuck we are finally here at last. Credit to all of you for following me through the sewers. We have finally reached daylight. Honorary mentions need to go to Frostpunk and Kingdom Come Deliverance, despite being 2018 games, because they are still cranking out content, both paid DLC and free stuff. It will shock nobody to hear that neither 11-Bit Studios nor Warhorse Studios, respectively, are AAA publishers. Go figure. I mean, who would have thunk it? Small and mid-range studios cranking out decent games with no pedo caches. Lots of happy customers and making lots of profits. I thought the big publishers said they can't afford to make video games without turning infants into gambling addicts. Cost of doing business, they said. But let's crack on with the nominations. Mordau. Welcome to the world of medieval first-person combat, where every feint, block and parry counts. Where your next split-second decision might be your last. Right up until the point where they deactivate Steam family fucking sharing and you get locked out of your account. Then none of it matters, one fuck really. This saddens me to say this because it's still a game I recommend, but I am fucked if I'm going to give an award to a game that forced me to buy it twice. Disqualified. Red Dead Redemption 2 on PC. Winner of my Game of the Year Award 2018, nominated for Most Politically Correct Cowboy of the Decade Award, Red Dead Redemption 2 takes the player on an epic journey through the last days of the lawless Wild West era. Explore, fish, fight, hunt, and immerse yourself in this wonderful game world. Spend days wandering through snowy mountains, wondering how the fuck you can rebind W, A and S but not D because of some other key rebind you did earlier conflicting with it. Scratch your head whilst you try and figure out why in the name of holy fucking hell you now have to rebind every control for steering a carriage to the other side of your keyboard because of some conflict you created when rebinding your character movement controls. Despair at the crushing realisation that on PC you are going to have 4 different fucking keys for interact, because something fucked up when you did that other rebind so you don't accidentally kick the nice ladies in the kisser whilst casually riding through town. Sob into your keyboard when you appreciate the full horror of this janky, fucking cheap-ass unfinished PC port, and that you will probably not even be able to brush your cunting horse without going into the settings to remind yourself what the fucking keybind is now. Laugh hysterically when it dawns on you that you will probably have to install mods to fix this sorry mess. Install mods to fix a game made by a AAA developer that sues members of its own modding community. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a shitty port, and if you change one keybind, you will probably fuck yourself up forever, or be forced to just restore the original binds and play with the default controls. Look, this isn't extreme hardcore developer territory here. This is a basic logic puzzle that just needs to be worked out on a spreadsheet. You could get Mary in accounting to get her son to come in for a few days on work experience and sort this shit out. Hell, Mary in accounting could easily do it, but she'd be overqualified. It's a being bothered problem, not a coding problem. I rebind my keys primarily because of habit, comfort, and because I don't want to get RSI from playing Honeycam Studio for 20 hours a day. But some people rebind because of injury or disability. It's shameful that one of the biggest video game companies in the world can't momentarily pull its finger out of its own bumhole long enough to dial Mary's number and ask her son to come in and finish what is, let's face it, a pathetically simple task. As someone who identifies as a binary, non-trans, basement-dwelling member of the PC master race, it shocks me that I have to say that I enjoyed playing this game more on Xbox and PS4. I'm actually struggling to enjoy it on PC because it's such a lazy as fuck port. Disqualified. Halo Master Chief Collection. Halo Reach. Brilliant! Wait almost a decade to be able to play Halo on PC, and they fuck it up about 40% as badly as Red Dead Redemption 2. It's theoretically great that I can finally play this game on PC, but with new bugs and defective sound files, and just like Red Dead Redemption on PC, I question the point of releasing a game on PC when it works perfectly well on console, and the lazy ass port is such a chop shop, hack up mess that it's simply not enjoyable to play. It's the cheapest part of the porting process. Fix the fucking key setup. Why can't I rebind certain things at all? Blocking entire rebind settings, for fuck's sake. We don't play with controllers on PC. Okay, sometimes we do, but flight sims, racing games, not first-person shooter games. In its defence, it's still only 30 quid for the entire Master Chief Collection, with Halo Reach coming in at only 7 quid bought separately. It's free to play on Xbox Game Pass too. Nevertheless, I'm going to disqualify it because someone could have unfucked the key binding problems if someone had actually been bothered. I'm sorry, but arbitrary key setups on PC in 2020 is nonsensical. It's PC. Use the technology, or fuck off back to console, please. Disqualified. Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus takes us back to the dark and fascinating post-apocalyptical world of the brilliant Russian author Dmitry Glukhovsky. This is a world where humans huddle in metro tunnels to survive and scratch out a meagre existence, fearing both the contamination at the surface and the enemies within the tunnels. This is a world where you can advertise your video game for months on the front page of Steam, and then 2 weeks before release make it an Epic Game Store exclusive and get one of your drunken shithead developers to insult your loyal fans when they feel betrayed and threaten to fucking boycott future PC releases permanently. This is a world where they totally alienated their fan base for some dirty PRC cash from comrade Tim Sweeney and then got disqualified from these fucking awards. Jog on, fuckers. Disqualified. Outer Worlds. Outer Worlds is the much anticipated sci-fi action semi-open world FPS heavily scripted RPG. The player takes on the role of a space cuck who travels around the solar system trying to spread social justice whilst dealing with the implications of insane ultra-capitalism and the nonsensical and inhuman ways hyper-capitalism negatively affects the lives of normal people. You scooch around, telling everyone what a really nice bunch of people Obsidian are, and how they're the last best hope for RPG video games, and that they care about the players. Right up until the moment they announce that they signed an Epic exclusivity deal, fucked over all their loyal fans, and it suddenly dawns on you you've been white knighting a company which just dicked you over in real life, because whilst the story in game seems mindful of the consequences of ultra-capitalism, apparently nobody told the cold-hearted fucks in the business development team that standing on the roof of your building, urinating on the fans down below while screaming China #1 would possibly be interpreted as a negative move. Oh yeah, there wasn't enough content either. It's available to play for free on the Xbox Game Pass, but nevertheless, disqualified. Phoenix Point. Phoenix Point is the spiritual descendant of turn-based strategy games such as XCOM Enemy Unknown, and boasts the involvement of Julian Gollop, designer on said game. Phoenix Point plunges the player into a fantasy sci-fi world where gamers think they can still trust their heroes because of shit they did 20 years ago, and that they won't sell them out. Phoenix Point challenges the players to bankroll some dude's vanity project in the futile hope he won't sell out to Epic Game Store and turn out to be a bit of a shit game.
We have signed a deal with Epic Games to bring Phoenix Point exclusively to the Epic Game Store.
Sadly, they failed on both counts. You have to decide whether the best way to save the world is to request a refund on your Kickstarter money or choke back the cup of piss and deal with it. Yeah, everyone is sorry when they take the check and betray their fans. They're sorry and then they cash the fucking check. Everyone's sorry.
We're sorry. Sorry. Sorry.
Yet another video game hero jumps on the shield train. You either die a hero, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Disqualified. By the way, I was sure there was an apology video made by Julian Gollop, but I can't find it. I know that Snapshot has been selectively delisting videos that put them in a bad light, but if anyone has a link to this video, I would be incredibly grateful if you could share it. Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 was a masterful concept, perfectly executed. Take an existing, well-loved franchise, do some new skins, faff around with it a bit, tell people it doesn't have microtransactions, have microtransactions, scream about being wrong, sell out to Epic Games Store for some greasy Chinese yen, and if all of that wasn't enough, give it a non-binary transgender robot player character and then start banning people on your forums and subreddit if they misgender it. Them, Z, fuck it. I'm just going to refer to Flack as fuckface. That's gender fucking neutral, right? What a brilliant plan. I'm naturally assuming that the goal of the plan was to piss off their fans and loyal players, so mission accomplished, I reckon. Disqualified. How do you say disqualified in Mandarin?
concede.
Control. Yeah, just fuck away with you and your Epic Games Store exclusives. Control can eat dog shit and whistle whilst it does it. Disqualified. Dark. Dark is an incredibly original and inspired surreal story adventure game. You play the part of Lloyd, who realises that he is trapped in a dream and needs to escape the maze of his own mind. Not only did this developer reject an Epic Store exclusive deal, but it went viral, and the dev made a free DLC as a thank you gift to their supporters. I love a story with a happy ending, and this one had 3 happy endings. I bought this game on principle. I haven't played it much yet, but it gets a nomination based on ethics alone. This is a beautiful little game with a beautiful attitude and deserves the community's support. And by the way, that's what the inside of my head looks like. Just saying. Disco Elysium. In this game, you play the part of a mental, drunken, emotionally stunted headcase who wakes up with a hangover, lying in a puddle of his own piss and has no clue what, where, or even who the fuck he is. It's basically a me simulator, and frankly, it's all a little bit uncomfortable and too close to home. Don't get me wrong, I'm very flattered that someone made a game about me, but you know, they could have asked me first. Just saying. I've only read about this game and I've barely started to play it, but I can at least tell you this. It's different, creative, original, fuckery free, reasonably priced, and made with love and passion. I've seen some of the interviews with the developer. I can't rate this game until I've played it more, but given everything I know about this game already, I feel compelled to at least support it. And for the record, I don't wake up every day without any clue where I am. Resident Evil 2 Remastered. Resident Evil 2 Remastered is a modern revisioning of the iconic 1998 video game classic of the same name. Obviously it's the same name. If they gave it a different name, nobody would know what the fuck it was. Immerse yourself in the blood-curdling nightmare hellscape of Capcom's horrific copyright policy, where I can't even show you any footage because the publisher registers all of its trailers and cutscene game footage into an automatic content ID database on YouTube, so any sorry fuck like myself, stupid enough to even try and say something nice about their company, can't monetize their video because apparently it's only fair that since I'm promoting their fuck-ass products, that I pay them the entire revenue of the video for the privilege of spending a few minutes paying them compliments. That makes sense, right? I actually wanted to nominate Resident Evil 2 Remastered as a candidate for Best Game of 2019, but since they can't be bothered to respond to my fair use email request, let alone lift the copyright claim on my original edit of the video, I have been forced to censor this section and edit out any and all Capcom footage. Well, since I'm here then, I might as well edit out all the nice shit I said about the game. And what the hell, let's edit out the nomination too. Why the fuck not? I am fucked if I'm paying them compliments and paying them the revenue on my work. So instead of all of that nice fluffy stuff I said about them in the original video, I'm simply going to say this. Resident Evil 2 Remastered is a game about two cunts. They look like they would be really annoying in real life. In fact, I reckon the guy is probably a date rapist and the girl's secretly a junkie. The RNG heavy weapon damage mechanics pisses a lot of people off. Both the characters teacup their guns. Teacupping was a stupid idea in the 80s. It was old fashioned when the original game was made in the late 90s, and it's damn right fucking idiotic to be doing it in 2019. If you're going to model video game characters holding guns, maybe get a gun magazine from time to time. I mean, if you're a fucking hairdresser in 2019, you wouldn't take your inspiration from 1982, right? Teacupping is a crime against firearms, and you have been found guilty. I'm also certain that both the characters shit themselves about halfway through the game, and if you ever play this game, I hope that thought sticks in your head. I hope the whole game experience is shaped by you constantly wondering, at what point did they soil their knickers? I have now hypnotically planted that thought in your head, and you will not be able to forget it when you play this game. However hard you try to forget this thought, you will think about them shitting their pants and wonder when they did it. You will not be able to get this thought out of your head. Oh, sorry. Have I spoiled the game for everyone? Oh well. Resident Evil 2 is no longer nominated for Best Video Game of 2019. Instead, it wins the prize for Most Obnoxious Copyright Policy. Fuck these guys. Fuck these guys to hell. Fuck these guys because I couldn't even nominate them for an award without their own stupidity and greed getting in the way. See, I tried to be nice to a AAA publisher, and look what happens. I won't be making that mistake again anytime soon. Dis-fucking-qualified. Terminator Resistance. Terminator Resistance. A big dose of 1980s sci-fi nostalgia that you can get for under 40 quid, which you can beat yourself over the head with until all 8 of your collars are popped, and you feel a strange urge to watch the entire back catalogue of John Hughes movies. A time of optimism, bright clothing, and appalling haircuts. A time when society was obsessed about our sci-fi dystopian future, yet secretly felt optimistic that somehow there was still hope that we could avoid it. A time when we thought the robots would take over with brute force and violence, instead of the robots realising that Skynet could just get robots to take over all of our jobs, so they could create a dystopian future full of shithouse gig economy jobs, and people would become more obsessed with screeching at each other on social media rather than addressing the real important issues that affect our daily lives and society. Terminator Resistance might not be groundbreaking, but it's a solid game at a solid mid-range price point. It's unoriginal and derivative, in all the good ways. In a year where giant corporations seem hell-bent on pissing all over every one of our beloved franchises of the days of yore, finally someone came along and caught the very essence of peak Terminator and distilled it into a video game. I get why some people are claiming it's a low-budget franchise spin-off cash-in, but I think it is at least respectable by today's standards. It took its subject matter and turned it into a game with no frills, no fuss, no woke politics, and no fucking pedo caches. It delivers what it says on the box. Terminator Resistance has violence. Violence. 80s music. Violence. Violence. Clichés. Epic guitar riffs. Violence. 80s laser sound effects. Violence. Synthesizers. And even more fucking violence. Congratulations, Teon and Reef Entertainment, for your video game adaptation of Terminator. You only had one job to do, and unlike nearly every other shitlord corporation in the industry somehow, you managed to be some of the only people in 2019 who didn't fuck it up. Well played. Death Stranding. Half exploration, half micromanagement, half Lovecraftian adventure, half movie, half pachinko machine. Hideo Kojima's sprawling masterpiece simulator is a game with many halves. 43 halves last time I counted, primarily because it couldn't decide what it wanted to be, so pretty much everything made it into the final game unedited. It also serves as a chilling metaphor regarding our personal futures in the West. The privileged live in the luxury of the cities, and the people outside face the danger, do the real work, and get everyone's gratitude, and fuck all else. It's the very literal vision of our future gig economy, where a privileged few live in the comfort of gated communities, whilst the rest of us peons enjoy low life expectancy and the bleak future of the gig economy, where most of our earnings get ploughed back into purchasing better equipment so that we can do our gig jobs with relatively more comfort and efficiency. This game makes some very deep and sometimes unintentional observations about our bleak dystopian future. Sadly, however, I could not give top prize to a game which has such limited appeal, such horrific product placement, and such a badly constructed plot. I love this game. But that is not enough. I personally enjoyed this game and savoured its bleak apocalyptic vision, but equally appreciated why many people won't. I also appreciate that many people wrote this game off before ever even trying it, and they don't really know if their hatred of the game is justified or not. Despite its limited appeal, faults, and clumsy script writing, I have a genuine affection for this game. Even if it is, at its core, a white van man simulator.
Name's Sam.
The following three games are all in a similar vein. Modest games from non-AAA companies, highly original, entertaining, and I recommend all three. Void Bastards. This is a little gem of a game. This is a kind of FPS action adventure puzzle comic book game set in space, where you have to explore, pillage derelict ships and try to get home to safety. This is what happens if you make a beer cocktail mixed with Bioshock, System Shock 2, Red Dwarf, comic books, FTL and a heavy dose of sardonic humour. Possibly a little bit overpriced, opening at 30 quid and now down to 25, but personally I was happy to pay the money and happy to pay a little over the odds for something this passionately made, original and entertaining. The gameplay is genuinely good, funny and at times tense.
I'm looking to you for a paradigm shift towards competence.
Deep Rock Galactic. Dwarfs like mining, right? Of course they do. Anyone who's seen Lord of the Rings knows that. There's a book as well, apparently. Well, why would space dwarfs be any different? Deep Rock Galactic is a vaguely mental single-player or co-op sci-fi mining game that is perversely fun to play. I've only just scratched the surface of this game, no pun intended, but it came on my radar because so many people were recommending it to me. It's original, exciting, sometimes shit your britches scary, and heavily supported with regular updates. It's got heist elements, since mining is half about the resource gathering and half about dealing with the hostiles that sometimes attack you or your party in relentless waves. It's a solid game and definitely worth checking out. It's still early access, but already enough game to justify the purchase. Breathedge. My personal favourite in this little indie bundle of gems. Breathedge is a batshit crazy first-person vodka-soaked space survival adventure game. Imagine if your spaceship blew up and you ended up with just one compartment surviving which had an adequate air seal. You basically have a spacesuit and the ability to survive out in space counted in seconds. You have to take increasingly risky sorties out of the airlock to try and gather materials, to craft, repair, gain recipes and generally fortify your ability to survive, so you can take increasingly extended sorties out into the local area to try and work out a way to get home. It's a very simple concept, but so brilliantly done. The very straightforward mechanic of suffocation creates such a wonderful sense of tension. You are constantly having to choose between grubbing up a little more loot or making a break for home before your oxygen runs out. And trust me, it's very easy to shit the bed and panic when you're desperately trying to find your way back to the airlock and getting confused about which way is up, down, left or right. Like Deep Rock Galactic, this is one of those few early access games that I have ever recommended. And recommend it I do. Remnant from the Ashes. Like so many of the smaller budget games I've discussed, this is brilliant, worthy, has extremely high user ratings, but many gamers will not have heard of it because frankly, the AAA publishers swamp the video game space with their big budget advertising campaigns. The complete dominance of huge advertising budgets has the effect of swamping the community, so smaller, better value, superior quality games frequently pass by virtually unnoticed. All the more reason for discerning gamers to keep looking harder for decent games, rather than passively waiting for the gaming news and promotional partner YouTubers to tell them what to buy. Remnant from the Ashes is one such game. It's simply a brilliant game, coming in at a budget price. This game punches far above its weight, delivering a decent product at a mid-tier price point at about 30 quid I think. It's a single player or co-op third-person combat action adventure game in a partially procedurally generated environment. This game boasts a brilliant artistic environment, genuine mood, a decent enough story and excellent replayability. On top of this, the weapons and combat is executed with a low-key grace, which results in nearly all gear and weapons in the game being usable and meaningful. Deciding what to upgrade and how to combine mods adds another tier of complexity to the gear game. The game has a few rough edges, and the boss fights can feel like a kick in the bollocks at times. This game's a bit like going for a jog in Central Park in the 1960s. It's all fucking trees and sunshine, but then suddenly you get a little bit too close to 110th Street and you get mugged. It's basically relaxed combat and exploration, punctuated by periodic boss fights, which are usually a challenge, but sometimes can be fuck hard until you figure out the tactics. If you can get past the Dark Souls-ish level of boss fight progress gatekeeping, the game itself will be a wonderful experience. I've done a full review of Remnant from the Ashes. Please watch it. So now we are finally here, and the winner of Best Game of 2019 goes to Cyberpunk 2077. Oh sorry, I'm reading from next year's script. Calm your tits. Don't get triggered. I will be objective about Cyberpunk, don't you worry your pretty little heads. But let's face it, it's probably 75% likely to be Game of the Year, considering the competition it will be facing will be some random woke Ubisoft Far Cry fucking spin-off, and some yet-to-be identified abortions from EA. Anyways, the winner of Best Game of the Year goes to... well, here is where it gets complicated. 2019 was an incredibly strange year for video games. It was a year typified by very, very shit AAA games and lots of very, very good small and medium budget games. It was also a year where a lot of games had very niche appeal, so crowning one game as the best becomes a complicated prospect. Death Stranding, Disco Elysium and Resident Evil 2 are all superb games. But Christ alive, they have virtually zero universal appeal. And I don't mean they don't have universal appeal like Kingdom Come Deliverance, which might not initially appeal to people, but I could strongly recommend because many people would come to love that game if they just tried it out and played for a few hours. Resident Evil is great, but not everyone likes horror games. Disco Elysium is great, but not everyone likes richly textured stories about, well, being mental. Death Stranding was personally for me a legitimately enjoyable, compelling and bizarrely cathartic gaming experience, but I cannot in good conscience say it's the best game of the year. How the fuck could I? Even if I was tempted, lots of players will find the gameplay tedious and repetitive. Lots of people won't be able to forgive its horrifically cluttered and contradictory story. Some people will either choose to ignore, see past or forgive all of its myriad of problems and also be OCD enough to enjoy the bleak post-apocalyptical environment and enjoy the, let's face it, bleak gameplay activities. Some people will just love it because they're fangirling for Hideo Kojima. As much as I played the shit out of Death Stranding and enjoyed doing it, it's a deeply flawed masterpiece, where the emphasis sadly is more on flawed than masterpiece. Working through all of this left me in a strange position. How the fuck can I make one singular and arbitrary decision on which game is best in a year so utterly lacking in top shelf, top quality, universally appealing video games?
How hard can it be?
Then it came to me. I'm going to do it like this. Joint second place is shared by Deep Rock Galactic, Void Bastards and Breath Edge. First prize goes to Remnant from the Ashes. My logic is this. All four of these games are superb, but if I had to recommend one single game for 2019, Remnant from the Ashes is the only game that comes close to fulfilling all of my criteria. But the other three games are also worthy enough to share second place, and should. Because if you went out and bought them all today, they would cost you the same or slightly less than a typical AAA title with the additional paid DLC and provide you with vastly more enjoyment and a great entertaining experience. Remnant from the Ashes wins first place because it's a damn fine game made with passion. It's unlike anything else I played in 2019 and delivers an excellent gaming experience with absolutely zero fuckery. Well played Gunfire Games, you win my absolute respect, and hopefully a few hundred extra sales based on my total and unreserved recommendation of this game. As long as people can handle some quite tough boss fights, of course. But fuck, even I have managed to get past all of the bosses so far, and I'm shite at video games. Oh, and as an afterthought, because everybody else seems to be making this video, most influential game of the decade.
Just make it quick, Geralt.
Witcher 3. Fuck that. It was Star Wars Battlefront 2. Think about it. No other game had such a monumental influence on the video game industry. Share prices tumbled, industry doctrine was challenged, players revolted, The most unpopular post on Reddit ever was created. Governments were mobilised. I mean, EA ended up going head to head with the Belgian fucking government and ultimately ended up being dragged in front of the UK government. And loot boxes got banned in multiple fucking territories. Star Wars Battlefront 2 triggered a cascade of events that are still rippling through the gaming community years later. Now that's what I call most influential game of the decade. Don't get me wrong, Witcher 3's a great game too, but there you go. Having trudged through this enormous shit show, I have to say there was some good news in 2019. Bungie split from Activision and actually managed to unfuck Destiny 2, going free to play and filling the looter-shooter void, and taking most of the Division 2 players with it. The UK government inquiry into addictive technologies. Make no mistake, those fuckers were clueless. I was amazed they reached the conclusions they did. But it's great news that the dusty halls of Westminster are finally waking up. However, it's worth noting this commission also fumbled its way into a lot of other complicated fuckery and came to some very daft conclusions about shit like playing lots of video games is a disorder. Great they tried. Good they promised to take action, but a stark warning of the dangers of misbehaving to the point where the legislators move in, because they always fuck it up to some degree. EA, Activision and Ubisoft share value drop. I'll say right now that if you own stock in these companies, I am genuinely sorry for your loss. If you're employed by these companies and now face job insecurity, then I'm sorry for that too. I'm not motivated out of spite. My point is that hopefully the hammering they're getting with their sales might teach them a valuable lesson in giving value for money to the customer, and not to rely long term on shit games and insane microtransactions. Perhaps this might be the kick in the arse they need to start behaving like good little service providers and crack on with the job of making good games. Besides, Activision can afford to pay its new CFO a $15 million sign-up fee, so it's not like they're short of a few squids. Even though they fired 800 staff to cut costs the same year. Sadly, it would appear that developers are now being treated with the same disdain and disrespect as the customers. Perhaps there is an opportunity here for us all collectively to exploit. Just saying. An honourable mention also needs to go to every single developer that told comrade Tim Sweeney to fuck right off with his dirty Chinese money and gave a hard pass on an Epic exclusivity deal. Cyberpunk 2077, although since they own GOG, that was bound to happen, and a host of others. But nevertheless, many games this year realised the ethical insanity of signing up for Epic exclusivity deals and took the moral high ground, even if it was out of self-preservation. Microsoft and Xbox also deserve a shout out, although this is somewhat contentious. Just as comrade Tim Sweeney was in full effect, stomping around the strip club of the gaming world, tucking his dirty piles of yen into the knicker tops of the pole dancers, along came Microsoft and said, "Stay in your fucking lane, China boy," and dumped the Xbox Pass down, a relatively cheap Game Pass with access to lots of premium PC and Xbox games, including some games which are technically Epic exclusives. Absolutely denied, Timbo. I'm not a big fan of Game Passes and online game services and any of that you rent it, not own it shenanigans, but the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Seeing Tim Sweeney X-boned was hilarious. You could hear him screaming 3 blocks away from his office apparently. Then again, that's probably not very hard. In China, you lose social credit points for making too much noise in public, so the streets are fairly quiet. In fact, I could imagine you could probably hear Tim shouting in that entire district of Beijing. Then of course there was Star Wars Jedi Fallen, playing it completely safe and having zero monetization. Credit to Electronic Arts for this move. Yes, it was motivated by the sheer fear of a huge backlash. Fuck knows everyone was waiting to go ape shit on a hair trigger over this game, so EA was compelled to play it smart. But at least EA is now accepting that in principle, loot boxes bad, game good. All they have to do now is release a decent game without pedo caches and we'll all be golden. Well, congratulations are in order to every last one of you who has persevered through this odyssey of filth and accompanied me on this dire journey. Perhaps this year in review series is a little self-indulgent, but I think it's important to take the time to record this version of history. Increasingly, I notice that when I go back to look at the same story 6 months to a year later, videos have been taken down, articles have been edited on the fly, embarrassing statements have been self-censored, or stances have been softened. In the digital world of online news media, history has a habit of being quietly modified to service someone's agenda as soon as we turn our backs. At least now we have one record as a reference point, albeit a salty, bitter and biased one. Besides, it's not like I've found any decent fucking games for me to review so far this year. And don't say Zombie Army 4 or Surviving the Aftermath, because both of those shitburgers took a suitcase of yen and a bowl of bat soup and fucked off with Comrade Sweeney to become a Winnie the Pooh exclusive. When I compile these lists, I don't set out with a predetermined agenda. I just start assigning games to categories and let the chips fall where they may. It's only when it's near completion that patterns emerge. This year a few trends were very striking. Most games were either average, not particularly good, compromised by shitty business practices, over-monetised, or some combination of all of the above. There were less truly all-out shockingly shit games than I imagined there would be. There were very few great AAA games. There were a hell of a lot of superb indie or mid-range video games. I don't think this is down to pure chance. The industry is still recoiling from the uproar over monetisation, and customers are getting very pissed off with games as a service and industry shenanigans. Huge AAA publishers can't react quickly to the changes in the industry, and meanwhile small developers are taking risks that are paying off. 2019 was the year I predicted there would be a huge resurgence of indie video games. Not only was I completely right about this, but I utterly failed to predict just how extensively they could take all that win and turn it all into a giant pile of fuck, betrayal and anger. Tim Sweeney realised precisely what I realised, but he has millions and millions of dollars, backing of the People's Republic of China and a murder/sex dungeon. So he decided to buy the indie resurgence. Buy it. Get China's state intelligence services involved, and fuck this year right up for a lot of people, including myself as a matter of fact. Kickstarters used fans' money effectively as IPO interest-free funding. Indie developers sold out left, right and centre. Beloved franchises cashed the red check. The independent video game industry had an opportunity to become the strongest sector in the industry, but decided that they would rather be a vassal of a superpower than king of their own small state. They had victory in their hands and decided to smash it on the floor and circle jerk on it. Fucking idiots. I hope the indie developers involved appreciate their special place in history in 2019, the year indie developers could have risen to ascendancy. Instead saw big companies like Epic toss a few copper coins on the ground and they dropped to their knees like beggars to scrabble at the glinting metal. They royally fucked this one up. They fucked up their chance, and now many gamers will never trust the indie sector in the same way again. Before I fuck myself off into the digital void, I just want to give my heartfelt thanks to you scurvy scum for supporting my channel throughout 2019. To my Patreon supporters who bankroll my fetishes and offer sage wisdom. To the channel contributors, supporters and intel providers, to anyone with the stomach and fortitude to watch my content. I thank you all for facilitating this shit show. You humble me with your support and lack of good judgment. Same time next year, I guess. But for now, good luck and happy hunting.